my dissertation research focuses on how urbanization affects bobcat health in the urban landscape. So I study bobcats around Los Angeles, and I collaborate with the National Park Service in this research. So together we sample bobcats across the Santa Monica's and state park areas like Malibu and Topanga, and then out east in more fragmented areas like Beverly Hills and Hollywood Hills and even Griffith Park. We have bobcats out there. And for my research, I'm interested in what consequences of urbanization influence bobcat health and potentially increase disease susceptibility in local bobcats.
I'm from the Center for Tropical Research at UCLA. Don't speak to my advisor, and he's over there. I study the diversification process along the gradient between the Amazon and Brazilian savanna, and I'm using frogs as a model to understand how new species evolve in that region. And with this study, I'm hoping to show that the gradient is quite important for maintaining and generating new species in the tropics. So with this research, I hope that the decision makers can use this kind of research to protect the area. And it's basically what I'm doing for my PhD project.
Hi, I'm Coastal Resources Director for Gilda Bay, and we've been doing cleanups for decades now and collected a lot of plastic pollution in the beach cleanups that we conducted, and have started to focus in the past 5 or 10 years on really preventing that plastic from getting to the beach in the first place. And so I've been working on several different ways to go about preventing plastic pollution, from using the Clean Water Act to develop regulations for the amount of trash that's allowed in our local waterways, to working on things like polystyrene food container, like styrofoam food container bans, requiring alternatives that are recyclable, as well as plastic bag bans at the local government level as well as the state level. And this has been an effort over the past 5 years for Gilda Bay. We have seen some great successes. Currently there are over 50 local governments that have plastic styrofoam food container bans, and about 45, if the vote went well this evening, 46 local governments with a plastic bag ban. And we're really hoping that these local initiatives will help catalyze statewide action so that we have comprehensive plastic prevention policies in place here in California.
My name is Christian, and I work with the Friends of, I've been working with the Friends of Local Wetlands with their education and restoration program. But this year I'm doing a project as part of my fellowship with UCLA, where I've expanded on a project where I'm recruiting schools to do more comprehensive environmental education experience at the Rio Wetlands, where they go and actually plant seeds in addition to an educational tour, and then they're going to come back in the early summer to see what had happened. But my main goal out of this project is really looking at how low-income communities construct need for environmental education.
How's it going? I'm Brendan. I've been working in Malibu for the last 7 years with children doing ocean safety and surf instruction. And in 2005, they had a bulldozer come down and bulldoze almost a mile-long strip in front of Rock Beach, 25 feet in width by 12 feet high, and put signs in it that said no trespassing. I was absolutely floored by this. It changed the beach forever. The last 7 years, every summer, it's just been dissipating to the point where they had to put huge rocks in front of their homes to protect it. So now the public can't even be down there on a medium high tide. You can only be down there on low tide. So I've been documenting this for the last 7 years, and it's been pretty intense. I'm also working on another project on natural sunscreen. What I've learned lately blown me away. I had no idea, but 4,000 to 6,000 tons of chemical sunscreen are being washed off humans every year into the oceans, into the lakes, and the reefs cannot handle it. It's damaging the reefs, and they're also linking skin cancer to these chemicals that we're putting into our body. If you think about it, like whatever you put on your skin is going into your bloodstream, into your body. So if you're filling your body up with chemicals, it's not a good situation. So these are the projects I'm working on.
Thanks. So my research focuses on how variation in the environment in which animals live influences patterns of survival and reproduction. So I work with both birds and also carnivores, and so I'm interested in how things like changes in food availability, changes in populations of competing species, predators, climatic changes, human activities, how all these things influence reproduction and survival. And my most recent research is really focusing on bird populations in the western U.S. And understanding how environmental conditions influence reproductive timing. So that means the time of year when birds breed, and so understanding what cues in the environment birds are using to time breeding, and then also how changes in environmental conditions might influence their ability to time breeding appropriately.
So I think we're starting with Laurel. I will sort of pass you the mic. So thank you for that. And can you explain to us what the threats are to local carnivores here?
So locally, urbanization is obviously a big issue. Los Angeles is one of the largest cities in the world, but we also happen to have the largest urban park in the world just next to Los Angeles. And so wildlife that live in this park, the San Monica Mountains National Recreation Area, have to deal with consequences of urbanization. And the consequences can be obvious, such as habitat loss and fragmentation, or there can be more cryptic consequences, like when we bring domestic pets into our residential areas, those pets can carry diseases that can be transmitted to wildlife and cause population declines in local wildlife. But we also use pesticides, and pesticides can have big impacts on wildlife, ranging from direct mortality. So locally, one big pesticide of concern is our anticoagulant rodenticides, and they're the #1 method of rodent control used worldwide. And we know that locally coyotes are dying from exposure to these anticoagulants, and raptors and owls die directly from exposure. And then within bobcats, we wonder if there is causing increased disease susceptibility in their populations. And so bobcats can be tolerant to the poisons, but they're dying from this disease called notometric mange that we do believe is associated with anticoagulant exposure.
So why is it important to conserve biodiversity in an urban setting?
So a lot of people ask me, well, all these problems that our wildlife face, it's really hard to remedy. We're not going to prevent expanding urbanization. But because urbanization is an expanding issue globally, it's really important to think about, if we don't preserve biodiversity in urban areas, where are we going to preserve it? And so one good reason to preserve biodiversity in urban areas is that urban areas tend to be constructed in very resource-rich areas, which means that around urban areas there can be these rare and important species that are important for biodiversity. And so that's one thing to consider when thinking about what are we going to protect in these urban areas and in the face of increasing urbanization. So another good reason is that if we're able to protect patches within urban areas, we can maintain corridors for wildlife that are able to move through the urban areas, outside urban areas into more continuous habitat. And so we're able to maintain genetic variation within wildlife that live in these urban areas. And then, of course, biodiversity provides a lot of ecosystem services for us. So wetlands help maintain clean water and prevent flooding in urban areas, and then trees will sequester carbon for us. And so there's resources that the biodiversity can provide that directly benefit humans as well.
So as the neighbors to these local wildlife populations, what can we do as individuals to support their health?
So I often urge people to, of course, not use anticoagulants, rat poisons. And so my research is heavily focused on just a few consequences of urbanization and how it affects our local bobcats. And I am very interested in the potential connection between rat poison use and increased disease susceptibility in bobcats and how these poisons are affecting other native wildlife species. So that's generally my first go-to answer, is that as an individual, you can go home and decide not to use rat poisons, and you can encourage your neighbors to do the same. And I also encourage people to consider what you're doing at home that might draw in pesky rodent species. So a lot of people feed birds that attracts rodents and pests that then they want to use poisons to try to control, and then those poisons are entering our ecosystem. And also, I've learned through my research that people are often very afraid of native wildlife that live or able to persist even in these very urban areas. So when I've done field work in Hollywood Hills and in the Griffith Park area, a lot of people that I met in these residential areas seemed terrified of coyotes and didn't really understand the biology of coyotes and that they're a natural part of that ecosystem. So I encourage people just to learn about wildlife that live in their own backyard, and if you are afraid of those animals coming into your backyard, then consider options for preventing that, like not feeding the wildlife and not putting out water for wildlife, and just understanding that just because they're there, they don't pose a threat.
Thank you so much. So Hilton, we'll move on to you. You study frogs. What is it that frogs tell us about the health of the ecosystem?
Well, frogs are very sensitive to any kind of disturbance. So, first of all, they depend on terrestrial and aquatic habitats to be able to complete their life cycle. So if one of the type of habitats is disturbed, they are not able to complete this life cycle. As a consequence, the population starts declining, right, in that region that you have disturbance. Second, they have external fertilization, and the eggs also is not protected by a placenta as in the terrestrial vertebrates. And they also lay eggs in the water, so any kind of contaminant affected their development very easily. And third, I think they have purple skin. The adults have purple skin, so any kind of toxin also affects the development, the adult phase of the frogs. And if you think about that, 1/3 of the species, amphibian species in the world are threatened, and among all the vertebrates, the amphibians are the ones that are declining the fastest rate. Well, there's something going wrong with the environment, right? So frogs are very good bioindicators because they're very sensitive to any kind of disturbance.
And one of the biggest threats to the rainforest is deforestation. In what ways has this affected the Amazonian frogs?
Well, I would say that probably it's affecting quite a lot. I'm saying probably because we don't have that many researchers down there on the ground to collect data and see the trends, what's going on with the amphibian populations. And there are a lot of space studies using these new technologies of remote sensing, satellite images, and for sure, those kind of studies are very important because you can see fragmentation and can see deforestation going on. But we need more researchers on the ground to follow what's going on with the amphibian populations and with other species down there. So I would say that the Brazilian economy is growing quite fast. Soybean plantations and pastures are invading the Brazilian savanna and the south of the Amazon in the region that I'm working. And well, we can refer from other studies, and it's pretty basic, right? Like if you have deforestation, you're going to have fragmentation and have separation of the aquatic and terrestrial habitat. So once like the tadpoles develop, they face soybean plantations and the pastures, and a lot of times they are not able to cross those matrix, and in the end the population starts declining. But we don't have this data on our hands, that's why we need more researchers on there.
I see. So in studying this tree frog, what other species have you come across that give us clues about rainforest condition? And how can you use your research to protect the future of rainforest diversity?
So when I was doing field work in Brazil in the past 4 years, I found a great diversity of species down there of frogs. There were some that I was not even able to identify, and well, I went to specialists in the natural history museums. They also couldn't identify them. Why? Because they were not described yet. And probably you were thinking, well, it's quite rare to find new species, but actually it's not, because there are not that, as I said before, there are not that many researchers down there. There are plenty of rainforests still to explore, and it's relatively easy to find new species. And well, I checked last week about the number of species in Brazil. Brazil has the highest number of species in the world. There are 946 species. When I started the PhD program, I checked, and there was a little bit below than 800. And well, over 5 years, you can see that they have like about 150 species, new species description. That's quite a lot. So with this scenario, you can see that it's hard to tell what's going on with the rainforest, because we don't even know how many species we have down there. So about the second question, the second part of the question, how I can use my study. So I'm studying one species of frogs, the lesser tree frog, and I'm using this frog as a model, as I said before, to understand how these species evolve along the gradient between the Amazon and the Brazilian savanna. And I don't know if you guys heard about the hotspots. Hotspots are the places that you have a high number of species. And you can see the pattern. It's quite important to preserve that region, right? Like just in the number of species. But also, we need to be concerned about those gradients, because probably those gradients are quite important in generating and maintaining the rainforest diversity for the future, right? Because we need to think about not only preserving the patterns, but also the process that generates and maintains the rainforest diversity. And I hope that this information can be used by decision makers in that area to design new reserves and preserve the areas that generate new species.
Thank you. Sarah, so this might seem like a fairly obvious question, but I feel like it's really important to address. How is plastic negatively affecting the ocean?
So the main impacts associated with plastic are wildlife impacts, and I think the thing that most people don't get their heads around in terms of the ocean life and how plastic impacts it is just the sheer volume of plastic that's getting out into our oceans. We've been conducting Coastal Cleanup Day, which is just one day out of the entire year in September in Los Angeles County for the past 20 years now, and we've collected over 1 million pounds of trash on just LA County beaches. And that's just a fraction of what's getting out into the ocean. Once it gets out into the ocean, it doesn't ever degrade. It can break down into smaller and smaller bits, and it sort of turns into this plastic soup. I think people have probably heard a bit about the Great Garbage Patch, and it's sort of a misnomer. There's no island of floating trash out in the middle of the North Pacific, but there is an area where all the currents come together, where there's a high concentration of plastic pollution that's just sort of floating in the water column. And wildlife in the ocean often mistakes it for food. So we're seeing animals as small as just the little zooplankton out there to large things like whales ingesting plastic. There was actually a sad story of a beaked whale, which is a fairly rare kind of whale that washed ashore in Puerto Rico in March, and they found about 20 pounds of plastic bags alone in its stomach. And so we're seeing, impacts from small to large, but these animals are confusing it for food. And they also can become entangled. In 2008, over 47 birds and sea creatures that live along the seashore were found to have plastic entangled on their body during Coastal Cleanup Day. So it was something that folks who were cleaning also documented were these harmed wildlife. So those are, animals that can't fight for themselves, and they don't necessarily have an economic cost associated with, them, but it's wildlife that's harmed from something that has oftentimes a more sustainable alternative to it. And the environment is important, but I think it's also important to recognize the economic impacts because we're in, a tough economic time. A lot of time the cost of pollution also hits the pocketbook in local governments. And here in Los Angeles County, the county spends over $4 million each year just to clean its 31 miles of beach. So that's just, a small section of coast that's costing the county quite a bit of money to clean up. So it's not just an environmental benefit to prevent the pollution from getting out into the ocean, but it's also an economic benefit.
So I think you might have already answered the first part of my next question. But the plastic bag ban trend is growing. How many places in California have adopted bans so far?
So hopefully 46, if you keep your fingers crossed this night, local governments will have adopted plastic bag bans. There's a variety of different types of local bag ordinances that we're seeing. So here in Santa Monica, there is a plastic bag ban on all grocery stores and retailers that sell food products, like CVS still falls under it because they sell food products, and then a charge on paper bags of 10 cents. In other communities like Malibu, there's just a plastic bag ban, but you can get a paper bag for free there. So we're seeing little differences here and there. But here in the LA area, we've got Calabasas, Malibu, Long Beach, Santa Monica, LA County, unincorporated, and Pasadena that have some sort of plastic bag ordinance. And most of them also have something addressing paper bags. We've got about a sixth of the California population now living in a community that has a single-use bag ordinance. And the kicker, hopefully, this month, LA City will be considering what is to be the most aggressive single-use bag policy yet. So they're actually looking at a ban on plastic and a ban on paper, just reusable bags at the point of sale. It'll be interesting to see if it makes it through the City Council. It would be the greenest ordinance adopted yet, but even if they have to compromise a little bit and go with a ban on plastic, charge on paper, it's still a great thing for the environment. I do get the question a lot about why bans and not charges for the plastic, and most people don't know that in 2007, the plastics industry pushed really hard in Sacramento and actually got a bill passed that says no local government in California can put a charge on paper. So we really, at the local level, are only restricted to banning plastic bags at the point of sale.
Wow, and just out of curiosity, what would be the 46th?
Ukiah.
Ukiah, okay. So my final question, what has been most effective in changing people's minds about single-use plastics?
So this is a tough question because I think everybody comes to this issue from a different perspective. The wildlife lovers get it right away as soon as they see a photo of a sea lion that's got a plastic bag in its mouth. People who care a little bit more about their pocketbook may not want to pay that 10-cent charge on paper. They don't have the option on plastic. They know their local government dollars could be going to better spent elsewhere on, whether it's traffic services, police, education. So I think economics goes pretty far these days as well. But what I really think is that plastic bag, it seems something simple, it should be a no-brainer, but it's really a good gateway into the larger issue of sustainability. It's focusing us to look at sort of our reliance in society on convenience and single-use items, and the fact that it's not that hard to bring your own bag, to bring your own water bottle or coffee mug. It just takes a little bit of personal change. And so we're hoping that because it's an issue that people can understand pretty easily, that will help people to think more broadly about what they're doing in their day-to-day lives, if they're using toxic chemicals in their house, if they're washing their cars in a car wash. Once they've got the idea of thinking about your impact at home, they may take it beyond the plastic bag.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, Christian.
Hey.
So my first question for you, how does your work with the Friends of Bio and Wetlands tie in with the work being done with Sarah and her colleagues at Yield Bay?
They tie in really, really niftily. really nicely because we do respect for Coastal Cleanup Day, and Bayona Wetlands is right on the coast. We're kind of like the entry of trash out into the bay, and so a lot of the trash actually ends up where all the people are picking up trash for Coastal Cleanup Day. And so it fits in really well, and I think for Hilda Bay, they work a lot with policy, and then getting people out and doing some volunteer work and all that. And we do a little bit of that. Actually, we do a lot of getting the community involved. And for any of you who've been out there and picking up trash or doing something about the environment, physically doing something, I think that it's also a learning experience, and we expand on that with our education program. And so all our we have like different grade school levels, from pre-K to college level and beyond, that come out and learn about the wetlands. We talk a lot about plastic, and the older you are, the more we're going to talk to you about plastic and all the other stuff that is going on environmentally. So that's how it fits in. For my project, I live in Koreatown, and I live in this street where it's really just amazing. Like after whoever the gardener is, mow the lawn and clean up what's that called? Anyways, and clean up within 20 minutes. There's trash in the lawn. I mean, there's trash already, and that in the beginning I was like, damn it, why are people doing this? Blah blah. It's a neighborhood, and I come to realize that I think that we have to really look a little bit more broadly and more holistically about why people do certain things, and so I've been working a lot with. For my project, we're working a lot with this one school, Magnolia Avenue Elementary School, and they're in the Pico Union neighborhood, which is just like 2 miles away from me. Very similar neighborhood, very dense neighborhood. Mostly, it's all low income, mostly Latino neighborhood. A lot of people don't have a college education. A lot of people are undocumented. A lot of people thousands of people are out of work. I mean, all these other issues have come into play. And then when I work with the school, I'm like, this is one area where the school doesn't have. This is one area that doesn't have to directly have to address the immediate needs of the community, like getting a job, getting access to healthcare, and all that stuff. That they can actually talk about the environment. This is a place. And so it was really amazing. These teachers were really awesome. They were like, yeah, we're going to come out there. And then I'm like, okay, sure. We're going to come out there with 300 students. And I was like, so if you came out on February or March to the wetlands on a morning, you might have, heard some kids out there singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or just to get through. They have to do this thing where they have to scarify seeds to plant them, and that takes a lot of patience, and it takes about at least 10 minutes to do that. Native seeds are very hardy, so it takes at least 10 minutes to do that, and the second graders, there's no way. So actually, I had to do partner up and do it. So I think that something like that was fun for them, and probably they don't connect right away with like plastic and trash. But I think that your second grade, I think that this is a great place to begin thinking about the environment. And sure enough, I stopped over there a couple of days ago, and your school walls are plastered with all of these like environmental projects that they've done since. They pick up trash in their school. They have there's all kinds of projects that are going on. And second graders are creating PowerPoint slides about being the solution to pollution. So it was really
That's great. So, what kind of lessons are the kids taking away from the tours that you lead?
Well, I think that they're first of all, some of these kids a lot of these kids are bilingual, and a lot of the kids, it's just like they're just learning to speak English, so it's also spilling over into other areas. But as far as like environment, I think that they are getting the lesson around garbage in particular, and also about wildlife too. And like right now, they can't make the they're not making the connection. Like the second graders are still like in this development stage where they're still trying to logically put things together. So they're not connecting like, yes, you had to actually go 15 miles out to visit an open space and do an environmental educational experience. And they don't know yet that it's their basic human right to be able to walk out their door and be able to spend time in a natural open space. So that's something that we want to impart with people a lot, and so that they have this connection that people don't trash because they have that connection. They don't, when I ask these kids like, how many of you have been to the beach? Well, less than half have been to the beach, so they can see the trash on the beach. They can see how that's affecting all of them. They can't make that connection. And so, yeah, so I think that it's a very important thing.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christian. Hi, Brendan. So you talked a little bit about this, but can you elaborate further on the environmental challenges that Malibu is facing?
Yeah, definitely. One challenge right now is the lagoon at Surfrider Beach. I don't know if you guys have heard, but they want to bulldoze the lagoon, 83,000 yards of it, bulldoze it, put it in trucks, and ship it out. And that is a huge problem with the habitat. So, also the bulldozing that happened at Broad Beach had a huge effect, a chain reaction. I think we need to let Mother Nature run its course. It's been doing it for millions of years. I don't understand why we have to come in with bulldozers and try to change things. It's pretty frustrating. So.
And you were talking also about your interest in sunscreen. What are the best alternative sunscreens that would protect us from the sun's rays and also not pollute the ocean?
Look for sunscreen that doesn't have oxybenzone or parabens in it. These are chemicals that are really bad for you and the environment. If you want to use a product that you've been using for a long time and it has these elements in it, I would think twice before heading out into the oceans or lakes, because it's having a huge effect. There's places right now, someone just told me too in Florida that there's a dolphin tank where you can pet the dolphins, and they specifically say you cannot use chemical sunscreen in it. Also in Mexico, they're doing tours to these reefs, and if you think about it, every hour, by the hour, there's a group of people going to the same reef over and over and over again. And it's just copper tone all over the water, just a film of grease. To the point where people are saying that the visibility is not even good, and the reef can't deal with it. It doesn't know how to deal with these chemicals. So, yeah, it's a big deal.
Can we talk a little bit more about Malibu's Broad Beach and
Broad Beach?
Broad Beach.
Yep.
And the factors that are contributing to erosion, and whether or not those effects are reversible?
Yeah, the effects are irreversible. It's a chain reaction. Once you bulldoze an area where animals of all shapes and sizes have been using it as food is now gone, you've just changed a huge pattern, which you can't really fix. I mean, they're saying that they want to do some dredging and they want to bring in a bunch of sand from out-of-source places, but I mean, the damage is done, so it's really sad. Hopefully they can bring some sand back in and things will make a better change, but Broad Beach the name should be changed to Narrow Beach. For sure, it's Narrow Beach.
Thank you so much, Brendan. Hi, Heather. So, based on your research on songbirds, what can we predict will happen with them as the climate continues to change?
Sure, so I mentioned reproductive timing, and so this is really my area of interest in research. And so appropriately timing reproduction to occur when conditions are suitable is really critical for reproductive success in these birds. So they need to breed when there's food available to rear young, which locally that usually means in the spring and summer. And so what my research and others are finding is that birds use information cues in the environment in order to achieve that appropriate timing. And so they rely heavily, particularly on photo period, which is day length, the amount of hours of light in the day, in order to anticipate when conditions are going to be suitable for breeding. So as days get longer in the spring, that induces physiological changes in the birds that allow them to come into breeding condition, and then that is basically used as a predictor so that in a few weeks or a few months, they're going to be having young and there'll be abundant food to feed their young. What the concern is as environmental conditions change, particularly with climate change, is that those cues that birds used to use to time reproduction may no longer be good cues to use to predict breeding. So for example, as springs become warmer, food availability, so plant material, insects may or appear to be hatching out, emerging earlier. So food's available earlier, but the birds may not be able to change or shift their timing of breeding to match that. So you may have birds that are breeding too late relative to when food's available to rear young. And so my own research has been looking at what cues are being used to time reproduction and how do changes in those environmental cues impact reproductive timing. And broadly what I'm finding is that it really seems to be like it's going to vary between species. So some species seem to rely on day length, photo period really heavily, and may have kind of limited abilities to change the timing of when they breed. But other species rely on different cues. So for example, there are some species that are really attuned to food availability and can adjust their breeding based on food availability. And so those species may be much better able to shift their reproductive timing in the face of changing conditions. So I think it's really going to vary among species. There's not going to be kind of one solution or one consequence for all songbirds.
Okay, and you also work with carnivores in Africa. And one of the things that I found really interesting about your research was the matrilineal bonds. Can you explain the importance of matrilineal bonds in hyena societies?
Sure. So spotted hyenas are social carnivores. They live in relatively large groups. They can be as large as 80 to 90 animals. These social groups we call clans. And really the core of this social group are females and their relatives. So if you went out and found a group of hyenas and you looked at kind of who was in the group, what you'd find is a number of females. So you have some older females, you have their daughters, their granddaughters, possibly their great-granddaughters. And so you've got these groups of females and their descendants that are really the core of the hyena social group. That's not to say there aren't males there. There are males there as well, but the males, the adult males at least, are males that were born in a different group and immigrated into that social group as adults. And so it's really these females that spend their lives together, and these female relatives are kind of the core social partners. They form really strong social bonds among these female relatives in these groups. The other thing that's unusual about spotted hyenas is their societies are characterized by female dominance. So a spotted hyena group, they have a pecking order, and so every animal in that group can be ordered in a dominance hierarchy from number one, the top-ranking animal, down through the bottom-ranking animal. And what determines where in this hierarchy you fall is, first of all, if you're a male or a female. So if you're a female, you're at the top of the hierarchy. If you're an adult male, you're at the very bottom. And among the females, it's not size or strength or fighting ability that determines where you fall, but it's who your mother was. And so daughters inherit the rank below their mother. And so again, these relationships between mothers and offspring determine where in the social hierarchy you fall, which determines kind of all aspects of life behind it. Determines, do you get to eat first or last? Do your cubs grow more quickly, more slowly? It permeates all aspects of their lives.
That seems really good for a with understanding again. Great. Well, I think now is the time to take questions from the audience. If anyone has any big questions. Oh, okay.
This is good. Brandon, is it?
Yes, Brendan.
Yeah. I was curious if you've been working at all with the actual city government about having, more environmental impact research before they do projects like that, or if you've been doing anything like that with the city of Malibu.
I've definitely been going to the city of Malibu in regards to the Broad. I've been definitely going to the city of Malibu in regards to the Broad Beach project, because once I saw the bulldozer coming down and bulldozing the beach, I was like, what is going on? Like, this is for real? Like, what? So I went to the city multiple times. It got to the point where it was so big and so crazy that the Coastal Commission had to come in and step in. So I've done everything that I possibly could as far as going to the city.
What do you mean for the future?
For the future.
Have they changed anything so that something like that won't happen again?
I hope so. I mean, they definitely know that that beach has been destroyed. So I think measures are going to be taken a lot differently when someone decides to put up a sand berm in front of their beach house because of what happened. Definitely. But yeah, it's a good question. I'd like to go to the city and tell them for sure.
Just because, sorry, I don't want to take too much time.
Yeah.
My brother is an environmental impact researcher, so when they want to build anything, he goes out there and counts how many tortoises are there and any possible effect it could have. So I just can't believe that they would do something like that and not know what the work is and what it could cause.
It's mind blowing. Some of these people, have third houses that they use maybe once or twice a year, and they're never down there. And the public was definitely a big issue. They wanted to keep the public at bay from their homes, so it was kind of like a mixture of keeping the public away from their property and also keeping the tides and swells from larger storms away. So, yeah. It's really frustrating. But yeah, people, just because they have a lot of money doesn't mean they can do whatever they want to do. And that's why I've been documenting this since it's happened. Because there's two sides of the story. Just because one person says, I had to protect my home, that's not the entire story at all. Yeah.
In what way has the marine life been affected?
Have you heard of the grunion runs? Yeah, so there was actually a grunion run happening when the bulldozing was happening. So
Was that before the babies were laid?
the eggs were in the sand, bulldozer came, just took it away. So again, it's a chain reaction all along the food chain. Once you mess with the smaller bays, it goes all the way to the top. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen as many dolphins there as I used to. For some reason, so I think that might have something to do with it. The sand has not been able to come back because now they have these huge rocks. They have 12 feet high by 20 feet high of rocks, which just took away even more from the public. So yeah, it's really frustrating. Another thing as well that's happening at Broad Beach and Zuma Beach. Broad Beach goes all the way down to Big Zoom, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Westwood Beach, but there's a restaurant down there called Sunset, and you're allowed to park really close to the sand, and in that particular strip, there's no cement barrier, so the sand that gets blown from the winds and whatnot go into the road, and when you park over the road, if you park over the road on the right-hand side towards the beach side, the oil that drips from the car onto the sand has to be scooped up and taken away. So there's major problems happening because when I was a kid till now, the beach was way more sand. And I've documented this as well. I couldn't believe what they were doing. I saw a bulldozer come scoop up the sand on the road, put it in a dump truck, and haul it away. I was like, where are you taking that sand? They're like, oh, we're taking it to the dump site because it's not good for the environment because it's got oil in it now. So I don't know how long this has been happening, years probably. So, I mean, sand is very important to the beaches for numerous reasons, and it's being taken away. It's very frustrating.
Is the granular Rio Grande being affected by this too?
The granular Rio Grande being affected from Broad Beach.
Was it?
To be honest, I don't know how to answer that question. The Grunion have had to figure out a new location to drop their eggs for sure. So that particular beach has been changed in so many ways that other animals have probably had to figure out, okay, we got to find a new location.
Is there any, what's going on in terms of what's going on in terms of efforts to protect the Malibu Lagoon?
The community has really rallied together to spread awareness about what's going on. But yeah, the game plan is to take 83,000 yards of the lagoon away. So the public and the community have been rallying around. There's been multiple rallies and newspaper articles about this. But something needs to happen at the root of this all, and that's up towards Agora, Calabasas, where there's a waste management place that drops their waste into that little valley that goes all the way down to the lagoon. That's what really needs to happen.
Any efforts like get the Nature Conservancy involved or some organization like that?
Yeah, there's definitely some organizations rallying around. For sure. I couldn't name you every one, but there's definitely people that are not happy with what's going on. It's a big mess all across the board because there is a problem there. The water's not flowing, so you get a lot of stagnant water, and the water quality is not good at all. So it's a big mess all across the board. But there are people fighting to make it better. Just need the right people to do it and make big decisions. Fortunately, the people in the higher places are very difficult to, I don't know how to describe it, but change their minds and what they're doing. They're very narrow-minded.
I just have a question for Sarah. Are there any plans to have more cleanup days over the year than just 1 year?
So the coastal cleanup day that I mentioned is the third Saturday of September, and that's an international coastal cleanup day, and it's been going on for over 20 years. But Field of Bay as an organization does several more cleanups throughout the year. So we have monthly cleanups. If anybody's interested in coming out, the third Saturday of the month, every month they rotate throughout locations in the Santa Monica Bay, and then we have several groups that adopt beaches and are required to do more frequent cleanups of those beaches. So. Cleaning up is a great first step because not only does it get the trash off the beaches, but it also is a great educational tool about what we see out there. But we found that it's just not enough. Even though we're cleaning up, like I said, over 1 million pounds of trash, there's still a lot that's not accounted for that's getting out into the ocean. And 80% of the trash that is out in the middle of the ocean is coming from land-based sources, and 90% of that's plastic. And like I said before, it doesn't ever biodegrade, break down, or assimilate back into nature. So cleanups are a huge important tool to not just get the trash off the beaches, but also to educate people about the major problems associated with plastic and trash.
All right. So as far as plastic does DDT affect like what kills the animals that ingest the plastic bag? Is it DDT, the pesticide, or is it just the plastic bag in general?
So you have a great question about what affects the animal and eventually leads to death, and it's really hard to tell exactly what caused death of an animal, but sea turtles are a great example of animals that suffer from plastics. They eat jellyfish and often confuse plastic bags and other plastics floating at the sea or jellies, and 6 out of the 7 species of sea turtles that have died and had necropsies done on them have found very large volumes of plastic in their guts, and so the plastic may clog the system and actually cause the death. It may also just sort of fill the system up so that the animal, when it does get some natural food, doesn't get enough nutrients, and so it may eventually die from starvation, but that starvation could have been caused by being clogged up by plastics. But your point about DDT is really important because a lot of the toxins that get out into our environment are oil-based, and DDT is one of those, as well as PCBs. And because they're oil-based and plastic is oil-based, they attract one another. And there's been some research done in Japan on pre-production plastic pellets, which are sort of the little bit called nurdles that are eventually melted down and turned into everything from your microwave parts to your plastic bag. And nurdles that have been accidentally released out into the ocean have been studied by this researcher who's found that they are attracting the chemicals that are already out in our ocean, like DDT and PCBs, and that they find there's up to 1 million times more on those plastics than what's in the ambient seawater. So not only is the plastic causing, clogging of the animal system, but it's also a little poison pellet for the animal because it's got a lot of toxins associated with it.
Sorry, this question's for Sarah too. So if, or hopefully just when, there are, plastic bag bans everywhere in California, would you turn your focus more toward bottled water, or would you, or just curious what you probably do next?
Great question. The top items we find in beach cleanups are styrofoam food containers, plastic bottle caps, plastic bags, and cigarette butts. And we've been working on all of those issues from different fronts. We've tried to run a bill a couple of years at the statewide level that requires the bottle cap lid to actually be leashed to the bottle so that it can't fall off, because we find so many of them on the beach. Personally, I think we should just go to reusable water bottles, but big industries like Pepsi and Coke are really hard to fight. And so if we could just require some better engineering, that would be a huge step in terms of progress. And also to require them to be recyclable. Plastic's really confusing, and there's all sorts of different resins. Some of them have a very strong market for them in terms of recycling and reusing. Some of them have a very weak market. And the type of plastic that bottle caps are made of are not very strong in terms of the market base, so they're not very recyclable. Plastic bags happen to be the same way. In California, we consume over 12 billion plastic bags each year, and less than 5% are recycled, which is really confusing to the consumer because, for example, Los Angeles City tells people that live there that you can recycle your plastic bag, just put it in the blue bin. Well, it goes to the recycler facility, but they don't want it because it will gum up their system, or they don't get enough money for it. So they actually bin it up, ship it down to San Pedro, and it gets shipped overseas to get burned. So think of the carbon impact associated with that. So it's just really confusing because there's a ton of misinformation out there about plastic recycling as well.
Just had a question for Heather about the birds, and you said some birds were able to use different cues. Some were just using photo periods, some were using other cues. Does it have anything to do in relationship to what they're eating, what guild they belong to, and given that you see bigger effects potentially for certain groups, and have you thought about, given the fact that climate change is going to be awfully hard to stop and change, what can be done about ameliorating these impacts?
So those are great questions, and so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information. So these things haven't been studied in as nearly as many species and taxonomic groups as I would like. So we're just kind of beginning to scratch the surface on this. In terms of what might explain differences among species in terms of which cues they use, I think a lot of it, at least in the birds I work with, probably has to do a lot with the timing of when they breed and when food normally occurs, which gets back to what their food sources are. So one bird I work with is the pine siskin, which is a really small little finch, and they can breed over about 6 months of the year. They're what I call flexible breeders. So they rely on a lot on like seeds that can occur somewhat unpredictably in time and space. And so they are really sensitive to food cues because they rely on a food cue that's unpredictable. So they can make these adjustments and breed earlier or later depending on when food's available. But other species who for generations and generations have evolved to breed on a food resource that's available at the same time of year every year for a very relatively short period of time, they probably evolved this much more fixed timing mechanism and may not be as able to make those adjustments. And in terms of what we might be able to do in the future, is I think my hope is that this research kind of provides a baseline for giving us information about what may or may not work in terms of interventions, or which species are going to be more or less vulnerable, and so where to target our resources in terms of trying to kind of make the best use of what resources we may have.